this film is documenting the parish history. And history, it deals with the past, but it's also a hope for future. And I know that the people here at IHM, because of who they are, are going to be blessed in the future.
In the mid-1800s, Carvel Hawkins, a businessman and farmer, owned 250 acres of good tillable land and a half dozen dwelling houses in Forestville, which later became Anderson Township. Carvel had a large Victorian-style home built that almost 100 years later was to become the first home of worship for the new mission parish of Immaculate Heart of Mary. In June of 1944, 2 Dominican order nuns from Adrian, Michigan, visited the Forestville area, driving from home to home with the help of Mrs. Agnes Kopp and Mrs. Dahl Wolfer, taking a census of the Catholic residents. They identified 90 Catholic adults and children. As a result, Archbishop John T. McNicholas established a mission parish, projecting that the area would be growing. A location and name were needed for the new parish. In his letter of August 14, 1944, executing the trust to purchase 9 acres of property, the Archbishop stated, "The Forestville congregation is to be known as St. Anne's Church."
My belief about how the parish got its name comes from the Williams family. Now, they didn't tell me this, but this is, again, speculation. They had all, of course, lived in the territory that is now IHM, down off of Asbury. The Williamses all went to Summit Country Day, where the chapel is the Immaculate Heart of Mary Chapel. And I believe that the Williamses put up the money to purchase the property, the original property where IHM sits. And they probably were able to get some naming rights as a result of that.
Most Reverend Archbishop, the Vicar and Mission of the Immaculate Heart of Mary are very grateful for the check of Mr. Charles Williams for the sum of $3,000. I hope we can justify your faith in laying down the foundation of religion in Forestville. I am gratefully yours, Frank J. Hyder.
Again, speculation, but I would wager money on that's probably what happened there as far as naming the parish.
After the purchase of 9 acres of the Hawkins family land and their old home from Mrs. Victoria Van Gundy for a total of $16,000, it was time to renovate the house into a church. Brother Bertrand Bailey of the Dominican Order set to work transforming 7 rooms of the downstairs living quarters into a T-shaped chapel, a sacristy, a temporary confessional, and a room for Father Hyder's office and meetings.
The house was quite an experience. It was one of the bigger houses in Anderson Township at that time, and it was owned by the Hawkins family. The Hawkins family were very staunch Methodists, and when they heard that the Catholics were interested in buying property, they were not in favor of it.
Since the Hawkins did not want to sell to the Catholics, a parishioner helped buy the property and turned it over to the Archbishop. Father Francis J. Hyder, pastor of St. Thomas More Parish in Withamsville, was appointed pastor with temporary limits, taking areas formerly in Guardian Angels, St. Thomas More, and St. Jerome parishes.
Father Hyder, who was let's call him a mission, IHM was his mission from St. Thomas More.
On September 17, 1944, he offered the first Mass in the newly created Immaculate Heart of Mary Mission Church with a capacity to seat 100 parishioners.
When we first started, it was so small, 100 families. It was shaped in a T with two wings. With at the back of the top of the T was a big window, and that's where the altar sat.
There was just one step up where the altar boys knelt on here, and then the altar was right back there.
And then on the far end of the T were pews, creaked like all get out. And then back in the back of the one wing was a makeshift confessional. That confessional was very rickety and not very stable. So periodically when you were in there, it would just fall. And so much to the chagrin of especially we who were young people, didn't want anybody knowing we were in the confessional. But Father Hyder had such a great sense of humor, and he says, "Oh, that's okay, who cares?"
Since there was no school there, we went to St. Thomas More.
The parish bought a bus, which was secondhand. It was an old blue bus, and they went around and picked up the kids that were going to go to St. Thomas More. Adelaide Timmons, who was the parish secretary, she was the bus driver. She did that for several years, and then they got George Smith to drive us.
This would have been the combination of the kids from both St. Thomas More and Immaculate Heart of Mary. This is Father Hyder. It's his Mass card from my mother when he died, and she hid it down here in 1972.
He was a hunter, I do know that. In the wintertime, he would love to go hunting. And that was his relaxation, and I never saw him lose his temper with the children. If they needed a coat, he would see that they got a coat. Very caring in that way.
Father Hyder was just a super guy. Dad was in the Holy Name Society, which had just began within the year because they were the movers and shakers. Just a couple years down the road, they started the Rosary Altar Society. So they were very instrumental, had dinners and all kinds of activities to make money because we knew that we weren't going to be able to stay in that house for very long, and that they were going to have to build a church.
IHM's parishioners decided to have a rodeo fundraiser on September 30th, 1945, but it rained so hard they had to reschedule for October 7th, and it was not the financial success the parishioners had hoped it would be.
Party's farm over on Hopper Road about the rodeo. That was more fun.
My parents were the first people married at Immaculate Heart of Mary. They were married actually in 1945, and I know the parish was founded actually in 1944, but they were pressed by Father Hyder that he was begging the people in the parish that somebody please get married, we want to have a wedding. So they were married in the original house there on the parish grounds. My mother does talk about the church smelling beer at the next day at Mass. They did have like an early morning wedding and then breakfast, and then it was like an all-day affair, and then the end part was the beer drinking apparently, so they had a good time.
Father Hyder was known for his expertise in hunting. And so the first festival, he offered bear steak and other exotic animals, and they made burgoo, which was everything and anything that he shot.
As a kid, I can remember the men folk all there with their cold beer, because it was summertime and it was hot, is on that driveway with the garages would be open. The women would be breaking beans because everything was served family style, and peeling potatoes, etc. The men were cooking the chicken.
And they built a big barbecue for frying the chicken. And so Forestville Chicken was just the name they gave the chicken dinner. John Holcamp had a mule, a donkey, and he claimed the donkey talked. And so he brought it up, and that was part of the publicity, Francis the Mule.
We had a strong relationship with Comboni, which was then Sacred Heart Seminary, and most of the parish were involved with their festival. Theirs was in June, and Immaculate Heart of Mary's was always in July.
when Father Hyder was relieved of our parish, and he just went to St. Thomas More and just had St. Thomas More, and Father Hageman came in at the same time. All the plans were started with the groundbreaking and plans for the parish, for the new church. There was a Brother Bertrand who built several churches around, and they were all configured the same way. They all looked alike.
The new church could accommodate 500 parishioners, 350 in the main wing and 150 in the side wing. 2 months later, the house church became the rectory, with Father Hageman and his mother its first residence. With a priest in residence and a permanent church structure, IHM was granted parish status by Archbishop Carl J. Alter in December of 1950.
And Father Hageman he had connections in Italy, and so he sent away for the statues and things like that for in the church. They were beautiful statues, Our Lady of Cincinnati and St. Joseph. But at that time then, when the church was built and we were into the church, then he moved into the house with his mother. His mother lived with him.
Billy Kopp, he introduced me to being an altar boy. So I can recall fondly serving the last Mass in the old house, and the next day he and I served the first Mass, then at what is now called Hageman Hall. But nothing like the marvelous church that we have now.
I remember Father Hageman being a tall man and very friendly. He loved wooden objects. If you notice, a lot of the things originally from the parish are wood. The statue of Mary is beautiful. I thought wood carved, I believe from Italy.
But it was interesting, we would try to see the progress of it, and it was hard pulling in because they had all the construction trucks here, and as I said, it was kind of a muddy field. They didn't have the grass sown yet. It was like, oh my God, the sister's going to have to walk and all that. And at that time, they were still in Long Habit. But it was interesting, just seeing first laying of the foundation and then seeing it rise up. And we thought, what's this really going to look like, And Father Hageman did invite us to come in after it was pretty well finished. We stopped one day, and he was the kindest man, but trying to picture, the classrooms where they were going to be, the office where it was going to be.
In 1955, the school opened its doors with 4 classrooms, an office, a kitchen, an outhouse, and a large activity room that doubled as the cafeteria and gym. The total cost was $250,000.
People were waiting for the school to open.
The initial enrollment of 159 students was divided between the 4 classrooms with 2 grades per class.
So it's very difficult when you have 2 grades in one room.
And the Sisters of St. Joseph taught the students. Sister Mary Ellen Robinson was the first principal. On April 15, 1956, Bishop George Raring dedicated the school.
$12.60 Columbus was bought very early on because they had that, and then the nuns, they bought it, and the nuns moved in there. They renovated it.
Because we all lived down at 6532 till their convent got ready here at Immaculate Heart. We had to be transported back and forth.
Parish fundraisers and parishioner contribution allowed an addition to the school in 1959 of 4 more classrooms and a multi-purpose room. The Women of the Rosary Altar Society raised funds through monthly dinners, carnival, and a yearly fashion show. After a period of declining profit, the annual IHM Festival was discontinued in 1961. The parish had grown to 425 families by this time.
Father McNicholas, when he came, he painted all the buildings green.
Father McNicholas, He was always like a Santa Claus. Get some nice gift and bring it over to the house. We would say, well, here comes Santa Claus. And he just enjoyed that. You never knew what he was going to bring. He would look around and kind of see what he thought we should have. And he would go down to Smallens and find it and bring it back without asking, do you want it? Father Anthony Backhoff was here, and he and I were in charge of the worship committee. Father McNicholas had asked, would we be willing to work on that? And that's when all the changes came in. So we were trying to gently bring the changes into the parish that came from Rome.
There was a lot of empowerment of people to take on responsibility and being a true Vatican II parish, very actively participating in the life of the parish and beyond.
And Dad was one of the first electors after Vatican II.
In 1963, Mr. Lawrence Kite purchased a lot adjoining the IHM school property on the northwest side and gave it as a gift to IHM. It had originally been part of the Carville-Hawkins estate. Additional school space was needed with the growth in the parish. However, the Archbishop requested that the parish raise $200,000 to wipe out the prior building debts.
Sister Therese Martin was the principal. But it was interesting at that time because we only had single grades. And during the time I was here, that's when we started double grades, 2 of everything. I came here in 1966, and that's when we were in lay clothes. But my years here at IHM were just wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed the children.
A separate building behind the existing school, connected by a walkway, was built in phases. 5 classrooms were ready in 1963, and 6 more were completed by 1967, serving 494 students. 5 Sisters of St. Joseph and 11 lay teachers taught the students. In 1964, first grade was eliminated in Archdiocesan parish schools and wasn't restored until 1975.
It was 4th through 8th at one time in the back, and the first 2 rooms were 5th grade rooms, right and left side, and then the next 2 were the 4th grade rooms, and 6th, 7th, and 8th were down the hallway.
The parish was now 980 families strong, and on June 7, 1973, Father Schroeder reinstated parish council to assist with managing the parish responsibilities. Parish council established the Communications Commission immediately, and later the Worship, Finance, and Education Commissions. In 1974, the Communications Commission published the first parish handbook, and in 1978, the first issue of The Way, now called The Heartbeat, was published.
Father Schroeder was he was like a grandfather figure. He was very supportive of Father Jim Mead and myself. He called us his boys.
But knew Father Schroeder very well. He was a great guy.
He was very fatherly and just such a wonderful man.
In 1977, Wilma Van Treck met with the Archdiocesan Youth Office and started the first youth group at IHM. Dave Sundberg was one of the first members and is now Father Sundberg.
1986 is when we had the first hired youth minister, Patrick Lesher at the time. So it built, by that time it was building. So once a month they would have activities with catechesis and socializing.
Doubleheader masses were offered in both the church and the school cafeteria for 2 mass times to accommodate all the parishioners due to the parish growth. A larger church was needed.
It was always standing room only in the old church at that point.
Since there was no space left to build, the rectory had to be removed. The Veals decided to buy the rectory and move it. This required cutting the 115-year-old house in half.
because it was going to entail a major move down Beachmont. They actually came in. They didn't tear it down, or they just lifted it up out of that site.
On Sunday, October 1st, 1978, telephone and utility crews escorted the front half of the house, raising the telephone cables along the way down Beachmont, then south on 8 Mile, and west on Forest Road to its destination. The back half of the house made the same trip a week later.
Really, a beautiful ordination mass. All our relatives came in for. That was really fun. It was nice. Yeah, he was a priest for like 15 years, and then he left and then got married.
And I know it was Father Schroeder. Once we left teaching, sisters weren't here any longer. He wanted that convent for the rectory, but the other priests did live in there. But they had to convert some of those bedrooms into one bedroom for themselves. So I'm sure they were knocking out of the walls and, that kind of thing.
We were all used to having Sister Teresa, a religious person. I didn't really have any qualms or nervousness about it being a lay person, because I knew they would hire somebody that was highly qualified.
It was the 1 year that I did teach the junior high that Sister Teresa announced that she would not be returning at the end of that year, and that there would not be a sister to take her place. And so, as it turned out, Sister Teresa, I guess, talked to Father Schroeder and recommended that I be considered for the principal's job. The school board was having their meeting. The cafeteria was packed. Father Schroeder has made the decision that Mrs. Patricia Armstrong will be the new principal. And immediately the hands went up. And who is this lady? And how many people did you interview? And where did she come from? And it went on until I went to the mic and said who I was, where I came from, what my background was. And the PTO was just incredible, incredibly supportive. And so was the school board. The people who served in that board were really committed to the school. And
They were.
We were just very blessed. And I think the school has been blessed over the years, because that kind of support is still the support for the school, and where it is today, and a Blue Ribbon School and all of the honors the school has received. And we've just been blessed with some outstanding leadership.
The new church was projected to cost $1,200,000. Through the capital campaign, $480,000 was already collected, and the rest was a loan from the Archdiocese. On October 22, 1979, the ground was blessed by Father Schroeder, and on December 8th, a chilly Saturday morning, longtime parishioner John Ernst and Father Schroeder placed the foundation stone for the new church. That same year, baptism preparation classes and the Christmas Giving Tree program started. On April 27, 1980, Archbishop Joseph Bernardine dedicated the new church, which seated 1,200 people, enabling the community to worship together. The hand-carved statues of Mary and Joseph, the Stations of the Cross, and the organ from the old church were incorporated into the new church.
So Dan Conlon came in there as the parochial vicar. He was the one who really kind of shepherded it along, because Father Bill had almost a nervous breakdown over the whole situation.
Archbishop Conlon was there the day that they closed the Hagman Hall, and then we processed from there to the new church.
Well, it wasn't the fact that it was a beautiful church, because back then, we had exposed concrete, and we had that reddish orange carpet. And that plain, almost oak-colored altar and ambo. So it wasn't the fact that it was a beautiful church, because it wasn't that.
It wasn't very aesthetically beautiful, that's for sure. But the community was very close-knit. It was 1,300 families.
The old white frame church was christened Hegeman Hall in honor of Father Hegeman, and was remodeled for use as parish offices after the pews were sold as part of the sale of the century.
The offices were on the wing. We made a youth ministry. It was back of the old sacristy. And then the main hall was lots of meetings. They wanted somebody that had some experience with Christ Renews His Parish, and I had begun it in the beginning stage at Our Lady of the Rosary, and then was part of the beginning stages of it there at IHM.
Father Schroeder, he says this movement is something I think this parish needs, and he was heartily behind it, and introduced it to the parish for what it was. It was a weekend of getting reintroduced to your faith.
I was involved with Christ Renews His Parish. I was able to go with Team 1. It was really nice.
There's a lot of healing and giving.
Additional funds were needed to help meet the parish debt, so a weekly bingo game was started, and the parish festival was reinstated in 1983 with Jack Toomey as chair.
And I think Father Bill Schroeder was not so opposed to it, but he knew it was a lot of work. So toward the end of his time, this festival gets started. There was at least 10 people on this core team, and started groundwork of getting this thing up and running. And it started a bit small, but it grew very fast. The famous old-fashioned dunking booth, that was something that I got to sacrifice myself for fun. Where Ken Zillinger coming in, he was actively involved in everything. Things really flourished fast.
Well, one of the things he always specialized in was the deaf and the dying.
That was an area of ministry that he apparently had a great deal of experience. And then of course, he left the priesthood. But I have nothing but good memories of him. He was a good man, a good, gentle, pastoral, caring man.
It was an experience in the summer. Keep them kind of focused on learning and growing in faith. It was a fun time, and really creatively living out their faith and enjoying faith. And I remember the leaders they would always say, I get more out of this than the kids themselves. Just a lot of energy and excitement, and great joy.
The first grade, 8th grade buddies is something that happened before I came. So that predates 1989. And that's something that's always been a highlight. They have a variety of activities throughout the year that are planned. And of course, the finale is the ever famous and popular last Mass of the school year, where the first graders sing a farewell song to the 8th graders. And for each year that I've seen that, there's always tears.
Thoroughly enjoyed his sense of humor.
We used to have every spring a cookout on the front parking lot, and that was done by Father Tom Bruner, and he would get the portable grills, and he would just put his apron on, and he'd be cooking hot dogs. It was just a very fun event, and it never got rained out.
Father Tom's story is such a tragic story, but I have nothing but good memories of Father Tom Brunner. I found him to be wonderfully pastoral. It was a real gift for him. He was a gentle, pastoral guy. I think he did especially well in ministry to the sick and the dying. I'm not unlike Father Ken Zillinger.
And then in 1995, I became the pastor at Immaculate Heart of Mary, which was my first pastorate, and certainly far sooner than I had expected anything like that to happen. It's been very enjoyable. I mean, I can't, there were certainly rough times and all of that, but out distanced by all the good. It was a surprise to me. I came home, I was living at Christ the King in Mount Lookout at the time whilst teaching at McNicholas. And I came home, and Father Jerry Hammerly, who was the pastor there, said, have you heard? And I'm like, well, have I heard what? And then he tells me that Immaculate Heart of Mary was open. And he looked right at me. He said, I think you'd be a really good pastor there. And I'm like, well, I really don't want to be a pastor right now. I enjoy doing what I'm doing with teaching. And he said, well, if you don't nominate yourself, I'm going to nominate you. I had gone on a trip to Europe with a whole bunch of kids from McNicholas. I got a phone call in Paris. This is Bishop Modell's secretary. Can you hold for the bishop? So he gets on the phone, and the Archbishop would like me to be the pastor of Immaculate Heart of Mary, and would I accept that? And I said, can I think about this for a while? And he said, he did not drop a beat. He said, you have 33 seconds. And so I finally told him yes. He said, thank you very much. Hung up.
He had a vision, and it wasn't just, we're going to do it my way, but I believe this is what we should be doing. This is what the church would like us to do. And he followed through with that.
When Father Jan was appointed pastor, he found himself quickly in need of a music director. And I got a call, would have been his second weekend here, so July of 95. And he said, I need somebody to come in and cover our 9:30 and 11:30 masses. Are you available? And I said, sure. One of the things that I'll always remember about my first weekend here in 98 was sitting at the piano, announcing the entrance hymn, and hearing the volume of sound that came from the congregation. And I was just overwhelmed by the energy and the enthusiasm of the assembly.
The initial response that I gave to Father Jan was, that I really did love teaching, and at the end of maybe 3 years of being principal, I could go back, and he was okay with that. And so when the end of the 3 years came back, I reminded him that, I'd really like to go back to teach, and he said, I understand.
On October 19, 1995, the groundbreaking for the Parish Center occurred. That included 4 classrooms, office and reception space, a connecting covered hallway between 2 school buildings, and the gymnasium and stage.
Well, when we came, we were right in the middle of a building campaign then. That was the first sort of campaign that I was involved in. It started out as we needed, it started out we knew we needed to build a gym, and that's, frankly, we had kids involved in sports, and we were using the old cafeteria was the gymnasium. Well, Father Jan came in the middle of that, and we were at the point where I believe it had been approved, and reluctantly agreed to go ahead with that campaign, and it worked out very well. The campaign was successful. The buildings were good. And
with regards to the process involved in building or renovating anything, there's a lot of planning that has to go into it, and it's not just the visioning of what needs to happen with that project, but how is that going to affect things further into the future, even after that's finished. Very blessed we had great people there at the parish who saw what needed to be done and knew that, could see the place was growing and wanted the school to grow, certainly.
And so Father Jan took it over. He had a really special interest in the school because he believed that it was a valued ministry. That's a word we've not had heard before used. He also wanted to make sure that people were not turned away because they couldn't afford or, for the tuition. He also wanted to update the facilities, which did really need to be updated.
KSC was very active, and Joe Bishop, who was a member of IHM forever, came to us one day. Some of the guys at IHM said that he was asked by the higher-ups to create a council at IHM. Well, the Knights are very active in terms of service work, not only to the parish, but locally. They coordinate the monthly breakfast that we have at the 7:30 and 9:30 Mass.
They pitch in and do a church cleaning a couple times a year.
Service is such a key part of who we are as Catholic Christians, and that takes the shape of outreach, that takes the shape of in the form of our twinning communities. We'd already had established the twinning relationship with the Cultural Center at Pontejola Norte, since 2000. Since I've been, we've been able to twin also with my sister's parish, Our Lady of the Mountains in Stanton, Kentucky. And it's been a tremendous blessing for both them and for us here at IHM to get to know the people and see the great work that they do.
By this time, IHM was the third largest parish in the Archdiocese, with over 75 ministries led by parishioners. The groundbreaking for the Vision for the Millennium building projects occurred on July 24, 2002. It included the full renovation of the 1955 and 1962 school buildings, a banquet hall for meetings, a new kitchen, and 4 classrooms to accommodate the 3 fourth-grade classes back into the main school.
And IHM, obviously, has been a very, very generous parish. People have come around to pay for what they know needs to be done. I mean, the church was packed, and the school had no more room, and we didn't have proper meeting space or office space or any of those things. So it was all very necessary.
The foresight, and I'd have to say the main leadership, Father Jan, the business vision that you do have to spend money.
The school was completely gutted. Floor tiles were taken out, ceiling tiles were taken out, wiring taken out, completely gutted and refitted. Heritage Hall was added, which has been a huge blessing. Obviously, the parking lot reconfigured. We did not have this east lot. That was a different piece of property owned by somebody else. There were 2 buildings on that lot, one of which still stands, which is our annex building. When we bought that area, there was another building in front of that called the K building. That building was demolished, and we made room for the parking lot expansion.
Since the renovation was not completed by the beginning of the 2002-2003 school year, the 7th and 8th graders opened the school year at Comboni.
The kids loved it. There was some hesitance because we're not on a campus. Fortunately, people knew who the Combonis were, so it wasn't like we've never been here, we've never used but we'd never used the classrooms because that was a minor seminary at the time. We were told that we would spend most of the school year there because it would take that amount of time to build the rooms, which was going to be the rooms that were going to be behind the gym, the finale of that. And then we got word the middle of December, they are done the building for all intents and purposes. I would say it was a good experience. It was. And the 7th, 8th graders thought they were special because of where they were.
In 2001, Spanish Mass was offered every second Sunday at 4 p.m., with a potluck dinner and fellowship afterwards. And by July of 2004, it was offered weekly. The church was remodeled and enlarged to include a gathering area, choir rehearsal room, hospitality area for weddings and funerals, and a Eucharistic Adoration chapel.
Archbishop Polarczyk, he'd call you after you were pastor for about 6 months, and he'd say, why don't you come down and let's talk through things. One of the first things he said to me is, he says, that is the ugliest church in the Archdiocese of Cincinnati. And I'm like, yes, Archbishop, I've kind of come to see that. And he said, do something about it. So that was sort of the catalyst. I don't think he realized the extent to which we would go there.
Through that, there was a master plan developed. And the 3 top pieces of that were the worship space, the school environment, and adult formation.
We hosted parties in our homes. There was a lot of them. We must have probably 30 or 40 parties. Right. But we did raise a lot of money. And people saw the need. And again, I think it was building on the success of the gym being built and the other things there too. It was Father Jan. He knew, the big thing for him obviously was the church renovation. And he was wanted to add welcoming space, just a place where people could congregate.
Our sense of prayer, our sense of liturgy is supposed to be about beauty. While it was a very practical place, it wasn't a very beautiful place. And so that influenced much of what we did there. With regards to, the shape of the altar, the building materials, the windows, and the themes of the windows, that was all by committee. The purpose of stained glass windows through the centuries of church history was to help people who couldn't read to know the Bible. I think we're seeing in the church today that we're definitely trying to go back to and capture some great sense of beauty in our spaces, because it does affect the way we pray.
Remember the catalog Father Jan put together to furnish the church? Because the original fundraising did not include any furnishings. The furnishings, when he put out that catalog, that was another $1 million that came in
and
after the campaign was pretty much
idea.
done. Best idea I ever had, because a lot of people could see this is what I bought. We told him, said, you'll never get those things. He said, watch.
Suddenly we had a real gathering space. And it's truly a gathering space, And guess what? There's an 1,100-gallon font in the vestibule. And I'll tell you what, it has transformed the experience of baptism. It's terrific.
I baptize you in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Older youngsters, those kids, they put on that sackcloth alb, and they climb up those stairs and down into that water. In some cases, that water is up to their, just below their chin. And it's just a wonderful experience of baptism. You can really appreciate this dying, but going under the water and coming up to new life in Christ. Suddenly that becomes a really tangible sign of what baptism is all about. Not just about being washed of one's sins, but changing your way of life.
I will always recall in the time that I've been here is the rededication of the church. Probably the number one highlight was moving back in after having been in the cafeteria for so long, which in and of itself was a pretty special time.
I have to be honest with you, kind of enjoyed the camaraderie of it.
Because it really, I think, brought everybody a little closer together and, helped us, I think, appreciate even more the church when we came back.
By 2004, there were 10,122 parishioners from 3,067 families utilizing the 26-acre campus that IHM had grown to. A second long-range plan was implemented providing for the spiritual needs of IHM parishioners, which included implementing perpetual Eucharistic adoration starting on the Feast of St. Joseph, March 19, 2004.
And then, of course, we have perpetual Eucharistic adoration, which was another significant change that was made possible by the fact that we now have a Blessed Sacrament chapel, which we did not have before.
Deep-rooted faith. We can remember going in and spending time there. It was fairly late at night, but somebody was still there. As a result of that, we have continued to do our hour of adoration, even though the host is not exposed.
And then, of course, we eventually bought the property where is now the pastor's residence, and that was a greenhouse, but it had been inoperative for a while.
There was a donation, and I think Father Ed Burns was the first resident back there. Father Ed, then Father Howard, and then me. And so where Father Jan was has been used as the residence for our assistant pastors, our parochial vicars.
And when Father Jan was leaving in July of 2008, the school had a collection to raise funds to landscape that entire area and dedicate it to Father Jan upon his departure.
Also in 2004, the playground campaign reached its goal of $48,500 for the new playset, and a concession stand and shelter were constructed by the boosters. Additional property for the football field was acquired, and in 2008, the boosters extended the football field and added 2 new goalposts and a scoreboard dedicated to Jim Bolger.
And I was in education for 19 years. I fell in love with it. I did my doctorate in education administration, and was an assistant principal and a principal. So I did my 12-year term at St. Margaret of York, and this happened to be at the same time Father Jan was leaving here, and so we ended up flipping, and people were very welcoming. Pleasant surprise was the ownership that the parish had for the parish. They were involved. They had that ownership of ministry, that ownership of participation, and then it was a great great thing to come to.
And Father Tom, his skills are he's wonderfully pastoral. He does wonderful work with the sick and the dying. Those are his gifts. He's a gentle, caring, loving man.
In 2008, the Elijah couples implemented to encourage ongoing prayer for vocations in the parishioners' homes.
In 2000, we discovered that we really were going to need some additional space. And providentially, we found that a daycare center that was literally adjacent to the church building had closed. Inquiries were made, and we were able to purchase this very nice 3-room building, which had a complete basement, which would eventually itself be used for youth ministry, and the upper classrooms for some of the 4th grades, and eventually would become home to our kindergarten.
We had looked at buying that building, I think, a number of times over the years, and the price wasn't right. We couldn't swing it. And the Archdiocese said, "That's wonderful, except it's got to be a cash deal. You can't incur any more debt."
It was an opportunity, and Father Tom was very, very blunt about it. He said, "It's just an opportunity," and we said, "Yeah, let's just give it a try." And instead of hosting, but the best thing we ever did there, instead of hosting parties in homes, we did them in the center, and so people could walk around and see this building that we had a chance to buy. And the potential was there. I mean, you could see it. I mean, all you had to do is walk through the old offices and see how bad. I mean, people were sitting on top of each other.
The offices were bad.
Our parish offices were in the small house on the west end of the property, and they were quite tight quarters. We had a lot of people in there. It was cozy, but we were really stretched for space.
Yeah, of all the campaigns, that was the easiest one. Because people, again, they could just see firsthand. Number one, they knew why they were coming. They were going to be asked for money, so they came in. And a lot of people said point blank, said, "I'm really not prepared to give again." And they just walked out saying, "Oh, makes too much sense."
And in a relatively short period of time, we raised every penny of money for that. I mean, which is terrific. And it was well over $1 million. I can't remember the exact number, 1.3, 1.4 million, something like that. On top of the debt we were already paying off.
I was kind of skeptical that it would happen, but it did. The parish stepped up, provided the funds, and we were able to purchase that building without incurring, any additional debt.
And the generosity of the parishioners, and that's something that just stands out.
Let's go play house. Let's go play house.
When I came here, there was not a kindergarten, there was not a preschool, and we had experienced situations where families were having a good experience elsewhere for kindergarten and staying elsewhere. And who doesn't have a good experience in kindergarten? But so it was important, I thought, to be able to have that pipeline and establish kindergarten, and then we were able to use Hageman as dedicated space for a preschool. And I think a blessing to families to be able to have everybody in the family here. Krista Devine was on as an assistant principal and head of the preschool, and then we were able to transition her to being principal.
It was amazing. It was a really great process because we had just fundraising with us over there. So we had small groups, we had large groups. I think our first year we had 65 students. So every year we continue to add classes. It is a happy place over there.
And it allowed us to do a few more things too. And Father Tom sort of increased it to the renovation of the old offices and a retired priest's house, but also, and the other big piece was the preschool. No, even back to the old office building. I mean, people donated a lot of sweat equity to a lot of painting, stripped wallpaper, pulled out carpets.
To renovate that to accommodate retired clergy. To this point, we've not had retired clergy in, but we've used it. The permanent deacon program has used it on weekends, and also to accommodate other visitors that we've had. We've been blessed too with several Eagle Scout projects. We have the outdoor stations, outdoor rosary. We have an outdoor classroom, and we have the pathway. So we have 4 Eagle Scout projects back in that area that we've been blessed with too.
Multiple statues have been added to campus over the years, including the original Mary Grotto, built in 1949, the Sacred Heart of Jesus statue, St. Francis and the Children statues in the Children's Garden, the Rachel statue installed by the Knights of Columbus in 2012, multiple statues honoring Mary, and most recently in 2017, the Loving Tenderness of Mary statue. In addition, a mural by Gerardo Arias was added to the Parish Welcome Center in 2014.
Our students here, they come in ready to learn, and they just have many opportunities. And so they're always high achieving, but I think it's a great opportunity to grow. I'm really proud of our special ed program that we have. So we can service kids that have autism, Down syndrome, speech, can really meet the needs of the students. So if they want a Catholic education, I know we can meet their needs. So I have a group of students that can be in the advanced program, accelerated, and then also on level.
The Doyle family has been able to help us to establish an educational endowment, tuition assistance, so that our families can come here.
Like I said, our kids are high, and the demographics of the kids, they are high achieving. So we want to push them, and I think all of that is so important. But we have to remember we're here for the faith, and that is the foundation of our school. We need to continue to bring the focus back to that, and that's a blessing.
One of the things I most appreciated about IHM was what I first encountered, and that was the worship that was done at the parish. Worship and the quality of it always seemed to have a high priority. The fact that people are willing to reach out with so many ministries and to touch people's lives. Those are aspects of our parish, and very frankly, I've met so many wonderful people over the years.
We're so blessed with our worship. Dave Oxshire, music, the choir, all of the different aspects that go into worship. And again, I think that speaks to that ownership of how people value and relish that good worship that we do.
But that's kind of feeling about being in a place where I know and love all these people. They're really wonderful people. When I'm here on a Sunday, even if I'm having an off day, after being here for a couple of masses and talking to a few hundred people, I leave here feeling really good that I'm a part of this place. I'm a part of the lives of all of these people. What a gift that is, you know.
As much of a debt that I left when I left there, that I was not settled with. At the same time, I think it's been a beautiful testament to the people there in having paid off the debt as they did. You know, IHM has been able to do so many things because of people's gratitude to God and giving back to the Lord through that community and taking care of one another. And I think that's significant. It's not too many places that do that well.
It really speaks a lot to this parish. You know, the fact that just recently we retired the debt.
The mortgage burning, that was, wow. I think when Father Jan and I switched parishes, we traded $7.5 million debts. And, we're blessed here to be able to continue, through the generosity and stewardship of our people, the great watchfulness of staff to have the celebration that we did.
The people. Because I've been there a long time, I've seen so many people come and go. Anybody could do anything for you.
There was a friendship, a closeness at Mass under the different priests that we've had.
I think working in the liturgy, that really was a gift in many ways for me.
The lasting relationship for over all these years now that I've been gone is such a fond memory of being part of IHM.
I think for the faculty and myself, to be in that kind of an environment, to be able to work with children, to help mold them, to help them to be the incredible people they turn out to be.
They would bend over backwards to make sure that their community, that parish, is taken care of. And there are many there who continue to do that, seeing God's presence in everything that happened there.
The understanding that everything we have, the gifts that I've been given, the gifts that you've been given, that we've all been given, are from God. And we have a responsibility to share those gifts with others, and in so doing, give those gifts back to God to honor and glorify His name. And that has been, I think that has really hit home with me in my time here, and my understanding of that deepened very much.
You don't do things by yourself. Ministry is not a one-man operation. I've been blessed, with so many, and I think the humility side of it is that the Lord blesses and provides. It's hard to put into words that blessing and gratitude to feel with that.
The beauty, I think, of the parish is to have seen it grow. So those first years when it was IHM St. Thomas More, and then IHM had its own identity. But to come back here and to see what the parish is and to be part of it's really been wonderful.
The parish is a blessing, has been a blessing to not only, I think, parishioners, but to a wider community, and a wider community here, a wider community, internationally, and a wonderful footprint of ministry to God's people.
And it was I remember feeling, oh my God, it's so good to be a part of a faith family. The people of this parish were wonderful. And I consider this place family and home. And it has been a wonderful experience to be a part of Immaculate Heart of Mary.